So, you've probably heard about the gout diet, right? The whole low purine thing. But what's the real deal with it? Does it actually work? And what are you really supposed to be putting on your plate? Okay, let's dive in and break down the science behind eating to manage gout. I wanted to kick things off with this quote because it's so important. For centuries, gout has had this terrible reputation, right? This stigma that it's all about overindulgence. But modern science, well, it's telling a completely different story now, and we really need to pay attention. And that's a perfect lead-in to our first section here. We're going to completely reframe this whole conversation. Let's forget about blame for a second, and instead let's talk about biology. Because if you don't understand the why behind something, it's pretty tough to figure out the how, right? Okay, this slide right here, this gets to the very heart of it. Get this. While what you eat can definitely trigger a painful gout attack, it doesn't actually cause the underlying condition. There was this massive study, we're talking 2.6 million people, that basically confirmed gout is a chronic disease that comes down to our genes. So the main takeaway, it's about your genetic blueprint. It is not a personal failing. All right, so we know it's genetic, but how does food fit into the picture? How does it actually trigger those awful flares? Well, it all boils down to this one little chemical compound, the purine. So what in the world are purines? Well, turns out they're pretty much everywhere. They're natural building blocks in our own DNA, and they're in a ton of the foods we eat. Normally, our bodies just break them down, and one of the waste products is uric acid. For most of us, that's totally fine, no problem at all. But if you've got that genetic predisposition for gout, the whole system can get, well, kind of jammed up. It's like a traffic jam in your body. You eat food with purines, your body makes uric acid, but then, and this is the crucial part, it just can't get rid of it fast enough. So the uric acid level starts to climb, and eventually it can form these sharp, incredibly painful, needle-like crystals in your joints. It's a perfect example of how a totally natural process can just go haywire. And this brings up a really fascinating point. Not all gout is created equal. The big question is why your body is having trouble with uric acid. Is it making way too much of it to begin with? Or is it just not doing a good job of clearing it out? So, check this out. A major study actually sorted patients into two groups. A whopping 68%, that's more than 2/3, are what they call underexcretors. Basically, their kidneys just aren't flushing out enough uric acid. On the flip side, only about 11% are overproducers, meaning their bodies are just making too much from the get-go. And figuring out which camp you're in, that can really change how you approach everything. Okay, so we've got the how, but does changing what you eat actually make a difference? For real? Let's take a look at the hard data. The short answer, yes. A big yes. And it happens fast. One study took over 600 people with gout, put them on a strict low-purine diet for only 2 weeks. And what happened? Their uric acid levels dropped by an average of about 64 micromoles per liter. That is a real measurable difference in just a couple of weeks. Pretty amazing. But wait, it gets even more interesting. This is the real aha moment. When the researchers broke down the results by those gout types, they saw something incredible. The diet worked best, by far, for the overproducers. And it makes perfect sense, right? If your body's main problem is making too much uric acid, then cutting back on the raw ingredients, those purines in your food, is going to have the biggest possible impact. All right, so the science is solid. Now for the fun part, the practical stuff. What does this all mean for your actual dinner plate? Let's talk about building a gout-friendly meal. First up, let's talk about the green light foods. These are your low-purine heroes, the foundation of your plate. We're talking about things like dairy, eggs, most fruits and veggies, and whole grains. You can pretty much eat these freely without stressing about purines. And hey, bonus, some studies even suggest things like low-fat dairy and cherries might actually help protect you. Okay, next we've got the yellow light group, the moderate purine foods. This is where most of your lean meats, chicken, fish, and even things like lentils and chickpeas hang out. The key word here is moderation. You don't have to cut them out completely, but keeping an eye on your portion sizes is absolutely key to keeping your overall purine count down. And that brings us to the high purine foods. Think of these as the red light list. These are the ones you really want to watch out for. We're talking about organ meats like liver and kidneys, some game meats, and those tiny oily fish like sardines and anchovies. They pack a serious purine punch. Oh, and don't forget about meat gravies and yeast extracts. And yes, sorry to say it, but beer is on this list too. All right, I want to bust a quick myth here, because it's a big one. You might have seen veggies like spinach or asparagus on some of those high purine lists. But here's the deal. Study after study shows that purines from plants just don't seem to trigger gout attacks. So the good news? Eat your veggies, all of them. Here's a little surprise for you, something that kind of flips what we all think we know on its head. We always hear that white meat is better than red meat, right? Well, check this out. A serving of sirloin beef actually has fewer purines than the same amount of chicken breast. Wild, right? It just goes to show you it's not just about red versus white. The specific cut of meat really, really matters. Okay, I know focusing on every single food can get super overwhelming. It's a lot to keep track of. So let's zoom out a bit. A much smarter approach is to think about your overall eating pattern, one that's just naturally healthier and lower in purines. See, the goal isn't to be on some super restrictive, miserable diet. It's about finding a healthy way of eating that you can actually stick with for the long haul. And the research points to a couple of really great options are proven to help with gout. Two of the best are the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet. The DASH diet, for example, was actually created to lower blood pressure, but then they found out, hey, it lowers uric acid too. And the Mediterranean diet is packed with healthy fats and anti-inflammatory foods, which can also help keep flares at bay. They're both fantastic, sustainable choices. And this is maybe the single most important point I want you to take away from all this. Diet is an incredibly powerful tool. It really is, but it's not a cure. For most folks, just changing your diet isn't enough to get your uric acid levels all the way down to where they need to be. The best way to think about it is that diet and medication are partners. They're a team, working together to keep you feeling good and free from flares. So let's wrap this up. Diet might not have caused your gout, but it is absolutely 100% part of the solution. It puts the power back in your hands. It gives you a way to take control and lower your risk of those awful attacks. So that leaves me with just one question for you. What's one simple, smart food swap you can make starting right now?